Mary Magdalene, a figure often cloaked in mystery and misinterpretation, has always captivated my curiosity. When we think of her, many of us are quick to recall the image of a sinful woman, haunted by her past and marked by society's harsh judgments. Yet, is that all there is to her story? Over the years, we have been conditioned to believe the narratives others have shaped for us, but how often do we stop and ask ourselves, what is the real story behind Mary Magdalene? To be fair, her portrayal in the Gospels has been marred by centuries of misunderstandings, with the most famous being Pope Gregory I's association of her with the prostitute, despite no biblical evidence to support this. She was a woman, no doubt, of immense strength, faith, and perseverance, a woman who stood by Jesus during his most challenging moments. She was among the first to witness his resurrection, an event that not only defies the laws of nature, but also symbolizes rebirth and hope. In a world that often downplays the voices of women, Mary Magdalene's story is a reminder of how often we fail to recognize the true essence of those who have been marginalized. As I reflect on her life, I find myself questioning the assumptions that have shaped my perceptions of others, especially women. Why do we label and judge so quickly? How much of what we believe is based on fact, and how much is shaped by the biases and misunderstandings of others? Her life challenges us to look beyond the surface, to dig deeper and uncover the stories that are too often left untold. Mary Magdalene's story is one that has been wrapped in layers of myth, assumption, and cultural distortion. For centuries, her name has been associated with sin, repentance, and, perhaps most famously, the label of a prostitute. Yet, when we examine the historical and biblical texts more closely, a very different image of this remarkable woman begins to emerge, one that is both powerful and revolutionary. The Gospel of Mary, a text discovered relatively recently among the Nag Hammadi scrolls, offers a fresh perspective on Mary Magdalene that challenges the conventional understanding of her role in early Christianity. It's a document that doesn't depict her as a fallen woman, but as an insightful, spiritual leader who had an intimate relationship with the teachings of Jesus. In fact, she was one of the closest disciples of Christ, a woman whose understanding of the divine went far beyond the common perception of women in the ancient world. Contrary to the image of a repentant sinner that has been perpetuated, the Gospel of Mary reveals a person who is deeply connected to the essence of Christ's message and his vision of inner transformation. The Gospel of Mary, along with other Gnostic texts, highlights an alternative view of Christian teachings, one that embraces personal spiritual experience over institutional authority. This perspective challenges the traditional dogma that would eventually dominate the Christian church, particularly after Constantine's reign, when Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. As the church sought to solidify its power, many early Christian texts, including the Gospel of Mary, were excluded from the canon, hidden away, or destroyed. What remains, however, are fragments of these once sacred writings that tell a different story, one of a woman who was not merely a follower, but a teacher, a guide, and a vessel of divine wisdom. Why was Mary Magdalene so marginalized in the historical record? And why has her story been distorted? There are many theories, but perhaps the most powerful reason lies in the very structure of the early Christian church. In a society that was predominantly patriarchal, the idea of a woman being entrusted with such profound spiritual knowledge was a threat. Mary's leadership and her close relationship with Jesus would have challenged the male-dominated hierarchy of the early church. This is why, over time, her image was gradually tainted, turned into the stereotype of the fallen woman, and ultimately written out of the historical narrative. In the Gospel of Mary, we see a woman who understands the deeper, more mystical aspects of Jesus' teachings. In one of the key passages, Mary shares a vision she received from Jesus, in which he tells her that true spiritual knowledge comes from within and that we must transcend the physical and mental attachments that bind us to the material world. This teaching places the emphasis on inner transformation rather than outward acts of ritual or morality. It calls for a deeper connection to the divine, not through fear or judgment, but through understanding and acceptance of one's true nature. The contrast between Mary's wisdom and the fear of the other disciples is striking. Peter, the most prominent disciple in the canonical Gospels, expresses doubt about Mary's ability to lead or comprehend Jesus' teachings. In one powerful moment, Levi, another disciple, defends Mary, stating that if Jesus trusted her and loved her, then they should too. This moment of defense illustrates the tension between institutional power and the spiritual insight of those who are not part of the official power structure. What Mary teaches in this gospel goes against everything that many early Christian leaders wanted to maintain: control over the narrative, control over the interpretation of Christ's message. But her message, as revealed in these ancient texts, is radically different. She speaks of personal revelation, inner vision, and the importance of personal responsibility in spiritual life. Her teachings remind us that there is a higher wisdom that transcends the written scriptures or the doctrines of any church. It is an understanding that comes not from external authorities, but from a deep connection with the divine. Interestingly, this understanding of Mary as a spiritual leader rather than a penitent sinner was not completely unknown in the early church. In fact, some early Christian texts, like the Gospel of Philip, refer to Mary Magdalene as the companion of the Savior, suggesting a relationship that went beyond that of a mere disciple. This more intimate connection was recognized by some of the earliest Christian writers, but later suppressed by those in power. As I reflect on Mary's story, I can't help but wonder about the ways in which society continues to marginalize the voices of those who challenge the dominant narrative. Just as Mary Magdalene's role was minimized by the early church, so too have countless other individuals, particularly women, been denied the opportunity to speak their truth and share their wisdom. The history of Christianity, like the history of many religious traditions, has been shaped by power struggles and political agendas, but the true essence of spiritual wisdom remains, waiting to be uncovered. Mary Magdalene's life challenges us to look beyond the surface, to see the deeper truths that have been hidden or distorted over time. It invites us to reconsider the way we view women, spirituality, and the role of personal revelation in our own lives. Mary was not just a woman who loved Jesus. She was a woman who understood the deeper mysteries of the universe and who was entrusted with the sacred knowledge that could transform the world. Perhaps, in rediscovering her true story, we can begin to unlock the hidden wisdom that has always been available to us. Wisdom that speaks not just of spiritual salvation, but of the power of transformation, liberation, and self-realization. Mary Magdalene's significance in early Christianity cannot be overstated, yet her story has been distorted, manipulated, and marginalized for centuries. For much of history, she was reduced to the role of a penitent sinner, a fallen woman who is redeemed by Jesus. This image of Mary as a repentant prostitute has been perpetuated by the church and by popular culture, but it bears little resemblance to the true nature of her spiritual journey and role in the life of Jesus. The reality, as revealed by the Gnostic texts and the Gospel of Mary, paints a very different picture, a picture of a woman deeply connected to the divine and a spiritual leader in her own right. One of the most striking aspects of Mary Magdalene's story is the way in which she is portrayed as a key disciple of Jesus, someone who not only understood his teachings, but was entrusted with profound wisdom. The Gospel of Mary reveals that Mary was one of the few who truly grasped the deeper meanings behind Jesus' words and his message of transformation. The Gospel portrays her as a teacher, sharing insights and revelations with the other disciples, and even challenging them to understand the true nature of spiritual knowledge. This is in stark contrast to the more conventional portrayal of Mary as someone who merely followed Jesus, or, worse, as a symbol of sin and redemption. The Gospel of Mary presents Mary Magdalene as a figure of authority and insight. In one powerful scene, after Jesus' death, Mary speaks to the disciples, offering them guidance on how to interpret his teachings. She explains that true knowledge comes not from external rituals or dogma, but from an inner understanding of the divine. This message is consistent with the Gnostic view of Christianity, which emphasizes personal spiritual experience over institutionalized religion. For Gnostics, the path to salvation is not one of rigid adherence to rules, but of inner enlightenment, knowledge, and direct communion with the divine. Mary's wisdom was a reflection of this deeper, more mystical Christianity, one that was in direct opposition to the hierarchical and patriarchal structure that was beginning to dominate the early church. Despite her prominence in the Gospel of Mary, the historical Mary Magdalene faced significant resistance from the male disciples and early church leaders. In the text, Peter expresses doubt and jealousy toward Mary, questioning whether she is capable of understanding Jesus' teachings. This moment highlights the tension between Mary's spiritual insight and the patriarchal framework of the early Christian community. Peter's skepticism reflects the fear of losing control over religious authority, and his resistance to Mary's leadership underscores the gender dynamics at play in early Christianity. While Mary was regarded as a profound spiritual teacher by some of the early Christians, others, particularly male figures, saw her as a threat to their power and the established order. The way Mary Magdalene's story was suppressed is also a reflection of the broader cultural and religious dynamics of the time. As Christianity evolved, it became increasingly organized and institutionalized, with men taking the lead in the development of doctrine and church leadership. The emphasis on patriarchal structures led to the marginalization of women, not only in the church, but in society as a whole. Mary Magdalene, as a woman who was deeply involved in the spiritual life of Jesus, represented a threat to the male-dominated church hierarchy. In the centuries that followed, the church would actively work to erase her influence and redefine her role within Christian tradition. This effort involved distorting her story and relegating her to the margins of religious discourse. Over time, the narrative of Mary Magdalene as a sinner was solidified, and the true nature of her spiritual contributions was obscured. The medieval church, for instance, conflated her with other women in the Bible, such as the sinful woman who washed Jesus' feet with her tears, further cementing her reputation as a fallen woman in need of redemption. This misrepresentation was perpetuated through art, literature, and sermons, leading to the popular conception of Mary as a symbol of female weakness and subservience. In doing so, the church not only distorted her story, but also reinforced the dominant patriarchal values that were central to its teachings. However, the rediscovery of ancient texts like the Gospel of Mary offers us a new perspective on her role in early Christianity. These texts reveal a woman who is far more than just a follower or a sinner. Mary Magdalene was a teacher, a prophetess, and a key figure in the spiritual life of the early church. Her story challenges us to reconsider the way we view women in religion and spirituality, and it reminds us of the power of personal revelation and inner wisdom. In the end, Mary Magdalene's story serves as a reminder that history is often written by those in power, and that the voices of women, especially those who challenge the established norms, have been silenced and obscured. However, the wisdom of these women, like Mary Magdalene, continues to resonate through the ages, waiting to be heard once again. Her true story, free from distortion and misrepresentation, is one of profound spiritual insight, leadership, and a deep connection to the divine. It's a story that calls us to look beyond the surface and to seek out the hidden truths that lie beneath the dominant narratives of history. The rediscovery of Mary Magdalene's true role in early Christianity offers a powerful invitation to re-examine our understanding of spiritual leadership and the place of women in religious history. For centuries, Mary was wrongly characterized as a mere sinner, a woman whose identity was overshadowed by notions of repentance and redemption. Yet, as we look beyond the layers of misrepresentation, we find a figure who is far more complex, profound, and integral to the foundation of Christian spirituality. Mary Magdalene was not just a follower of Jesus, she was one of the few who fully grasped the depth of his message. Her insight into his teachings was so remarkable that, in texts like the Gospel of Mary, we see her as a leader, a teacher, and even a guide to the other disciples. She held a spiritual wisdom that was beyond the traditional boundaries set by the male disciples. The fact that she was a woman in a patriarchal society only adds to the significance of her role in the early Christian movement. She represents a counter-narrative to the historical suppression of women in religion, especially in an era when women's voices were marginalized and silenced. One of the most poignant moments in the Gospel of Mary is when Mary shares her understanding of Jesus' teachings with the male disciples, who are initially skeptical. Peter's rejection of her authority reflects the deeper gender dynamics at play in the nascent Christian community. It reveals how Mary's voice threatened the patriarchal order and why such a potent spiritual figure would later be erased from mainstream Christian tradition. The act of silencing Mary was not only a political one, but a theological one, aimed at consolidating male authority over the narrative of Christianity. Yet, despite the centuries of misrepresentation, the truth about Mary Magdalene continues to resurface. Through the rediscovery of Gnostic texts and the ongoing study of early Christian writings, we are uncovering a more authentic picture of her life and legacy. Rather than being relegated to the sidelines, Mary is emerging as a symbol of spiritual empowerment. Her story challenges the conventional narratives that have long shaped our understanding of Christian history. Ultimately, Mary Magdalene's true role in Christianity invites us to reconsider the way we view both women and spiritual leadership. It forces us to confront the ways in which gender, power, and spirituality intersect, and to reflect on how much of history has been shaped by biases and exclusions. Mary's story is not just one of personal redemption. It is a story of wisdom, courage, and spiritual insight that resonates deeply even today. It reminds us that the divine can manifest through anyone, regardless of gender or social standing, and that true spiritual authority often comes from within, not from external validation. In revisiting the story of Mary Magdalene, we are reminded of the essential lesson that spiritual authenticity often lies beyond societal labels and historical distortions. Throughout history, women like Mary have had their voices muted, their contributions minimized, and their wisdom obscured by patriarchal systems that preferred to keep power concentrated in the hands of a select few. Yet, Mary's rediscovered role challenges this narrative, urging us to reconsider how we define spiritual authority and leadership. Mary Magdalene is not just a symbol of redemption. She represents the deep, unacknowledged wisdom that has always been within women. In the Gnostic texts, where her teachings are brought to the forefront, Mary's role as a teacher and spiritual leader comes into sharp focus. She is depicted not as a follower, but as a vital participant in the unfolding of a new spiritual understanding, one that emphasizes inner knowledge and personal transformation. Her profound insights into the nature of divinity and the human soul show that spiritual wisdom is not confined to any single gender, class, or race, but is available to all who seek it. The lessons we can learn from Mary Magdalene are both timeless and urgent. As society continues to evolve, there is a growing need to embrace a more inclusive and holistic view of leadership, one that values compassion, intuition, and emotional intelligence. Traits often associated with femininity, but essential to all human beings. Mary's story reminds us that true leadership is not about dominating others or seeking external power, but about inspiring others through authenticity, wisdom, and the courage to stand up for one's beliefs. By reclaiming Mary Magdalene's legacy, we can begin to dismantle the long-standing barriers that have restricted women from fully participating in spiritual and religious communities. It also encourages a broader dialogue about the role of women in all areas of life, how we define success, how we distribute power, and how we honor the contributions of those who have been overlooked. Mary Magdalene's story is, in the end, a call to return to the heart of spirituality, where all voices are heard and all paths to the divine are respected. Mary Magdalene's journey, both within the Christian tradition and outside of it, serves as a reminder of the immense potential for spiritual growth and transformation, regardless of societal constraints. Her story is not just one of religious devotion, but also a reflection of the human struggle for identity, power, and truth. For centuries, she was reduced to a figure of redemption, a penitent sinner whose true essence was hidden beneath layers of patriarchal distortion. Today, however, her real role is being re-examined and reclaimed, offering us profound lessons in the importance of self-awareness and the courage to challenge established norms. In rediscovering the truth about Mary, we are also invited to consider how historical narratives are shaped by those in power, and how those narratives can be contested and reshaped. The erasure of women's voices from religious and spiritual history has been a long-standing phenomenon. Yet, Mary's emergence as a symbol of spiritual insight is a challenge to these long-standing systems of exclusion. Her teachings, wisdom, and leadership should not be viewed through the lens of a reformed sinner, but through the perspective of a teacher, leader, and one of the closest figures to Jesus, whose understanding of his teachings was second to none. Ultimately, the rediscovery of Mary Magdalene's true identity in Christian history serves as a beacon of hope and inspiration, encouraging both women and men to pursue spiritual growth with authenticity and courage. Her story challenges us to question the established narratives that have shaped our religious beliefs and practices, asking us to look deeper into the untold histories that await rediscovery. Mary's legacy reminds us that the search for truth is ongoing, and that every person, regardless of their background or gender, can contribute to the spiritual richness of humanity. Her story is far from over. It is an invitation for each of us to uncover the wisdom that lies within ourselves and to reclaim the power of our voices in the world today. In conclusion, the story of Mary Magdalene is not just a tale of religious reformation, but a deep, ongoing journey of reclaiming truth, wisdom, and spiritual authority. Her role in early Christianity was far more profound than the historical misrepresentation as a fallen woman or a sinner in need of redemption. She was a leader, a teacher, and a witness to the deepest mysteries of Jesus' teachings. As we re-examine her place in history, we are reminded of the power of truth to transform not only individual lives, but entire belief systems. This exploration of Mary's story encourages us to question the narratives we inherit, urging us to look beyond the surface and discover the rich layers of meaning hidden within. By doing so, we not only honor her legacy, but also find inspiration in our own journey towards self-awareness, authenticity, and spiritual growth. If you found this exploration of Mary Magdalene's life and legacy insightful, please consider subscribing to this channel for more in-depth discussions on history, spirituality, and personal growth. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below with your thoughts or questions. Together, we can continue to uncover the forgotten truths and lessons that shape our collective spiritual journey. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to exploring more thought-provoking topics with you in the future.